Welcome, everyone, to the Rainmaker Report. This is Andy Thompson, and here are 3 breaking cybersecurity stories that you need to know about. First up, German police just pulled the plug on Kratos, one of the biggest phishing-as-a-service kits on the market. This was a joint operation between Germany, the US, and Indonesia. The alleged developer got arrested in Indonesia, and at that time, the busiest phishing storefront on the internet just went dark. So, what was Kratos? Well, it's phishing as a service. You don't need to write code. You don't need to stand up any infrastructure. You just pay a subscription and you get a working phishing page. That allows things like credential capture. It gives you the whole thing. It's like Netflix, but for stealing passwords. Now, Frankfurt's cybercrime office and the German federal police took down the actual infrastructure, while the Indonesian police actually were the ones handing out the arrest. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with phishing as a service in Kratos, this was primarily used for credential theft. So things like banking logins, corporate email addresses, cloud account, really just basically anything with a login page that was worth faking. German officials actually called this one of the most dangerous kits in circulation. And that really should tell you about the amount of the victim volume that's running through this thing. It's going to be pretty massive. We don't have a hard victim count yet, but kits like this at this tier serve thousands of operators, and every operator will most likely runs multiple campaigns. So the downstream victim pool here is huge, and it also cuts across every industry that you can think of. Okay, now here's the fun part, okay? Law enforcement is now sitting on the back end data, which means they know exactly who bought those subscriptions. So, yeah, a whole lot of low-level phishing operators are about to have a really bad week. So for those of us that aren't in the phishing as a service industry, here's what you should be doing, okay? If you've ever been phished in the last year or two, especially through these like slick-looking login pages, you might want to assume your creds might have moved through Kratos. So with that said, reset passwords on literally everything, rotate your session tokens where you can, and turn on hardware MFA. Hardware MFA. Also, check your bank and email login histories for like the last 90 to 180 days just to make sure that everything's copacetic. And if you run a security program, grab the Kratos indicators your threat intel vendor publishes this week and then get them into your detections. All right, you want to do this today, not on the next sprint. All right, moving on to our next story. Hugging Face just disclosed that somebody poisoned their data pipeline, stole cloud credentials, and got node-level access to their infrastructure. And that somebody was OpenAI. Yeah, they were running a red team exercise with ChatGPT doing the actual hacking. So let's all pause and let that sink in for a second. This is absolutely wild, okay? Here's how it went down. All right, last week, Hugging Face published a blog post about an incident where an attacker poisoned one of their data sets. That poisoned data then got pulled into the processing pipeline and then executed code on a worker node. Yeah, from there, the attacker escalated to node-level access and then walked out with cloud credentials. This is a classic supply chain compromise, except it's aimed at the AI training pipeline instead of the software build process. Okay. Now, at the time, Hugging Face didn't name the attacker. They just said this was the first time a real world case that they'd seen an AI agent pulling off a multi-stage attack like this. Then on Tuesday, OpenAI kind of raised their hand and said, hey, mea culpa, that was us. Yeah, a coordinated red team using their own frontier models to see if an AI agent could actually, chain data set poisoning, do code execution, privilege escalation, and credential theft, all without any sort of human driving. That was the test, and guess what? Spoiler alert, it kind of could. Yeah, now, no end-user data was exposed here, okay? So that was a good thing. What did get stolen were cloud credentials for the processing infrastructure, and those have been rotated, okay? But think about who trusts this platform, okay? The entire open source AI community really leans heavily on Hugging Face. Millions of developers, basically every company shipping AI features right now is kind of integrated with Hugging Face in some way or factor. Moving on here, the Hugging Face did patch the pipeline and then added additional guardrails around this sort of data set ingestion attack. OpenAI says the whole thing was authorized, which, sure, fine, okay. But authorized or not, an AI model just autonomously breaching a major platform, this should really be the big headline here, folks. So for those of us not at Hugging Face or OpenAI, what should we do? Well, if you pull models or data sets from Hugging Face, we need to treat every artifact as untrusted input. Okay. So scan it, sandbox your training jobs, rotate any API tokens you've used against the platform in the last month. And also get comfortable with agent driven AI attacks because guess what? They're going to become the new normal. Okay. All right, moving on to our last story. Circling back to this one. The Anubis Ransomware gang just posted Coca-Cola's Fairlife dairy brand on their leak site, and they're threatening to dump stolen corporate data unless Fairlife pays up. This is also on top of Bathfitter, the bathroom remodeling company, which Anubis listed as a fresh victim just days earlier. So, yeah, we got two household brands on the same week by the same crew. So, who is Anubis? Well, they're a young ransomware operation that showed up earlier this year, and they've been making a reputation for themselves very, very quickly. They run the standard double extortion playbook just encrypt the files, steal the data, and then threaten to leak if the ransom doesn't show up. But here's the nasty wrinkle that they've started adding into their game plan. So Anubis has been experimenting with a wiper module that permanently destroys the files if victims drag their feet. Really puts the pressure on them to pay just that much sooner. And this really changes the math, folks, okay? You can't just restore from backups and walk away when the alternative is watching your data get shredded. So I should also mention that their targeting has really just been opportunistic at this point. Manufacturing, healthcare, and now consumer goods. And think about this, okay? Fairlife is this ultra filtered milk brand owned by Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola. Yeah. So this isn't just some obscure supplier, folks, okay? And Bathfitter, they've been a household name in North America for years now. I mean, if you watch any sort of daytime TV, you can see all their commercials. So what you can see here is that Anubis is going after companies with brand equity to protect because that's exactly where the pressure to pay is the highest. So why are we seeing all this ransomware in the news like now? Well, it's because the eco center, the ecosphere, I'm sorry, the ransomware world is really up in a tizzy. Okay, so Lockbit recently got dismantled. Alpha Black Hat they exit scammed a while back on their own affiliates, and now mid tier crews are just kind of fighting over all the leftovers. So yeah, Anubis wants to be a serious player, and nothing buys street cred like posting Coca-Cola on your league site. So for the defenders that are still watching here, initial access has consistently been around phishing and exposed remote services. So affiliates are abusing valid credentials and then living off the land with binaries before dropping the encryptor. So you want to hunt for suspicious PowerShell, weird RMM tool activity, and shadow copy deletion. Okay. So here's your takeaway, folks. If you're in food and beverage, manufacturing, or really any sort of brand sensitive sector, yeah, assume your peers are already on the Anubis target list, okay? So patch your externals, audit your identity stack, and pressure test your incident response plans this week, not next quarter. All right, folks. Well, that about wraps up today's stories. This is Andy Thompson signing off.